Thursday at 3:30. Yeah, let's get excited. Okay, you're going to find, so my name's Nathan Weaver. This is Robert Hernandez. We've done quite a few presentations together. There's actually times where I'll heckle him while he's presenting. It just happens. So you'll see what I mean. So first off, are there any SAP on Azure customers, users, partners in the audience here? What do we got? Okay, I see some hands going up. SAP on Azure customers? Any of you, or are we mostly partners? We got over here, over here. Great. Okay, here's the 4 items we're going to touch on. We're going to talk about the SAP modernization journey, which many of you probably understand it. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we'll touch on it. Unified data is a foundation for AI. Data is kind of important. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to explain a little bit about what this frontier AI thing is, a little bit more from a SAP perspective, but we'll go through that and talk about seamless integration. First thing, this slide always comes up first. It's always the partnership. It's either this slide or you see a picture of Bill Gates and 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗸𝗏 shaking hands back in the early 90s. The thing I want to point out about this is I'm actually one of those people that gets asked to provide input to the briefs that we put together for these executives. These connections are way more than once a year. Satya and Christian Klein meet very often. The executive leadership team from Microsoft and SAP's board meet quite often. What I'm trying to get you to understand is this is a real partnership. This isn't just a, hey, once a year we just kind of talk about things. Microsoft is a very large SAP on Azure customer. SAP runs a lot of their SAP systems on Azure, as well as RISE, GROW, BTP, all those things. And we're also very big partners, obviously, and supporting the ecosystem. Going into this modernization journey, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but obviously there's a couple different paths as part of the journey to the cloud ERP. There's RISE, which is more of the private edition. There's GROW, which is the public cloud. The path that we see many customers taking as they're on that journey is that in many cases it's hybrid. So maybe you dip your toe in with one application here, you've got a whole bunch sitting on-prem, you've got other things happening in the cloud. The point is there's a lot happening in this journey. It's not just like one step and we're done. What we're trying to do at Microsoft is streamline what these complex initiatives, we're trying to minimize the effort associated with it. So that comes with more conversations about data, more conversations about security, more conversations about productivity. How do we do these things around an SAP environment in support of that last column there, which is the business transformation, which in many cases you've all heard the clean core, or how do I keep the core clean with using BTP? But there's a lot of other aspects into that transformation journey, especially when we're talking about a composable architecture, which means, yes, SAP is in my environment, but maybe I have 7 or 8 other ISVs or other applications that are also part of the story that impact my view on business transformation. So, Robert, you've been way too quiet.
That won't last.
That won't last. Tell me about this Innovate to Rise story. So when we're talking about surrounding SAP with innovation, what's that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of customers come to me and say, what's different about running Microsoft or running my SAP on Azure, on Microsoft? What can Microsoft do to drive more value out of my SAP applications? So when we think about it, we really group it into 3 main buckets here. So the one on the far left is driving productivity out of your SAP applications by integrating in the Microsoft 365 productivity applications into your SAP. That is where your knowledge workers, your business users spend the day in, day out in Teams, in Outlook, in PowerPoint, in Excel. So how do we surface all of that SAP richness and SAP application and SAP information in the productivity applications where the users spend their day in, day out? So that's number one as we talk about how do we differentiate and how do we help you drive more value out of your SAP. Number 2 is data. So certainly your SAP system is going to drive so much critical information to your organization, whether that's finance data, whether that's HR, whether that's customer operations, supply chain, et cetera. SAP is going to drive a tremendous amount of data, but there's a lot of other data and a lot of other applications within your landscape. And when you start thinking about end-to-end business processes, I need to pull together that SAP data with the rest of the applications data within my organization so I can see a seamless end-to-end view of my business process. So we have a lot of technologies and capabilities to bring those two things together, which we'll be talking about in just a moment. And then the third piece is around security. As you move your application to the cloud, as we talk about things like AI, which are doing great things to help make your users more productive, unfortunately, they are making bad actors more productive as well. So how do we make sure that we're bringing the security to your SAP landscape, integrating what we know about what is taking place within your Microsoft landscape with activities taking place within your SAP landscape so we can get a holistic view of threats that are occurring and take action across those so that if we see nefarious activity with a particular user where they're downloading financial data out of AC.A, they're downloading all your HR data, they're downloading all your employee salary data, we can see that in the Microsoft Security Suite and we can block that off. So we think that's critically important to making sure that your landscape remains secure. So we have world-class tools to look across your full Microsoft landscape, combine that with activity and logs from your SAP landscape so that we get an end-to-end view of what your users are doing. And across all of those capabilities, we want to bring the best of the AI suite to supercharge all of those business processes, the data, and the security with more powerful agentic AI capabilities.
Hey, Robert, too.
Absolutely.
Microsoft is really, really good at threat protection. Okay, you've seen us. We have Sentinel. We feed all the logs from the different applications into Sentinel. Let's say with all these new things happening with AI, Defender becomes very important on how do I defend at the edge because your user experience becomes very different. In addition, okay, obviously we have the Sentinel piece. Vulnerability detection inside of the SAP application is also something that's very important for all the customers and partners in the room. That's why we've actually done partnerships with 𝗦𝗲𝘀𝗀𝗃, Security Bridge, some of these other partners out there who can really reach into this stack, but also feed Sentinel so that you can do AI on top of it.
Absolutely. So as we think about, let's talk about how do we drive these capabilities and drive some of the transformation that Nathan talked about across your enterprise. So first off, we think from a Microsoft standpoint that data and AI are interconnected. Everybody wants to do AI for their SAP and their enterprise business processes, but if I don't have clear and consistent data across the enterprise, that's going to fail. Right? If this business process can't talk to this business process, if I can't get consistent information across those business processes that span applications, then my AI is going to hit the borders of those data interchanges. So when we think about it, across the enterprise, yes, you're going to have SAP data that's going to be critical and core as your business process, but you may have applications in the IoT space, other on-premise applications, other enterprise applications, and you need to bring all of that information together. And once I do that, I can put agents over top of that can identify issues in business process, identify opportunities to take advantage of, that sort of thing. Those agents can provide recommendations and guidance to the end user about how to take action on those situations. And then finally, those agents can actually go back into the transactional systems and take action as well. So if you've seen some of the SAP documentation, they talk a little bit about the flywheel of productivity. We absolutely think that's the right way to think about it, but we also recognize that that flywheel extends beyond just your SAP applications into other solutions within your landscape. But don't just take my word for it. The SAP user group, the US user group, went out there and said that 88% of SAP companies, companies running SAP, are focused on integrating SAP and non-SAP applications. They're seeing that proclivity grow even more. So we're seeing more and more where customers are trying to drive business process and information across all those systems. And certainly from an SAP point of view, they've got some great data tools. but we know that many of you have a lot of other data sources out there. And this is where I think Microsoft can bring a lot of capabilities to add on top of that SAP data. Now, if you saw the announcement earlier this week, Microsoft and SAP announced a partnership where we're going to bring together zero-copy sharing across SAP Business Data Cloud and Microsoft Fabric. So if you're not familiar with SAP Business Data Cloud, that is SAP's new data solution that brings together the SAP landscape, the S4 ERP, the SuccessFactors, the Ariba, all of those different cloud solutions from SAP. They bring all the data from those SAP applications together into Business Data Cloud. But what we want to do is be able to share all of that information from SAP BDC over to Fabric, but then also any of that information that you have over in Fabric, be able to share that back to BDC. And so that was what we announced earlier this week. Now, as we think about that delta sharing, so that's zero-copy delta sharing. On the left-hand side, you can see, hey, with Microsoft Fabric, I can do that with on-premise data, IoT data, et cetera. Combine that with the SAP data through zero-copy sharing. That's going to come around mid-2026. But if you're not a Fabric customer, if you've made the decision where Databricks is more of your enterprise data application, that capability is available for you today on Azure. So whichever way you're looking at going from a data estate and data management capability, Microsoft and SAP have you covered across those.
And let's be very clear, that conversation has been happening for the last 2 years. So, I mean, we're really excited to have this in because our customer base has been asking for this, and it's been coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. So the fact that we're here and moving forward with it, we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and so once I have that partnership of that zero-copy data sharing, once again, I can combine all of that data from Microsoft Fabric that's in my OneLake, that SAP data, the non-SAP data, I can bring that together. I can utilize Power BI to visualize that SAP and non-SAP together in coordinated reports. And then on top of that, I can drive intelligent AI, ML, et cetera, across those combined data sets as well. So we really think that this is going to really unlock some data capabilities for our customers. As Nathan mentioned, this is an area that we were making tremendous investments in. So with SAP Business Data Cloud, it is currently available in 4 of our Azure data centers. Those are the ones in green there. But by the end of next year, we should have all of those data centers in blue. They will be available as well. So no matter where your SAP system is located, we should have a BDC system nearby to be able to support that data. And we're even talking to SAP about further expanding that data footprint as well. So we touched a little bit on the SAP data. Now let's talk a little bit about bringing together SAP and non-SAP data. So one thing that we have invested in from a Microsoft standpoint is not just the capability to bring in a lot of data and dump it into OneLake, but also to go out there and look at, by business function, how can we bring together the most critical enterprise applications within our customers and organize the data from those sources by business function. So how can we deliver pre-built capabilities for finance, for customer operations, for procurement, for manufacturing, for supply chain, whether I'm running SAP, whether I'm running Oracle, whether I'm running Salesforce, et cetera, and how do I unify all of that into a singular view of that information? So if I'm running multiple applications, I can see all my finance data from SAP and Oracle together, or all my customer operations from SAP and PeopleSoft together, et cetera, et cetera. So in Microsoft Fabric, we are delivering business process solutions that brings pre-built data models, pre-built data flows, pre-built data mappings, AI agents on top of that, integrated security so that I can unify all that information within Microsoft Fabric to help accelerate the type of analytics that I want. So let me show you a little bit of what that looks like because it looks great on a slide, but let's talk about what it actually looks like within your system. So here we see a Fabric system. Let me see, is it playing? Let's see, is it playing now? Let me see. Will you hit play for me, Nathan?
Nope.
Okay, so in Microsoft Fabric, I scroll down in the workload hub, I see business process solutions. And then what I do is I go out there and I say, okay, I need to create a workload, a space where I'm going to store all this data in business process solutions. And now I need to configure a new source system. In this case, I choose SAP. I name my source system, and then I say, oh, okay, this is an S4 system. It could be an ECC system, depending on what I have running within my environment. And now, okay, so I've set up a connection to my SAP system. Now I go through and pick what are the business functional areas that I'm interested in. In this case, I choose procure to pay, and I say, hey, I want to go and import that procure to pay model into Fabric for me. What that's going to do is create my medallion architecture with bronze, silver, gold. It's also going to know all the source tables that I need to do analytics on the procurement space, and will install all those tables and the connectivity back to the SAP system. The next thing I want to do is once I have that data in those data models, I choose to install the dashboards and reports. So that's what you see here. This is a pre-built dashboard for spend analytics that my CPO might want to go out and look at spend by category, spend compliance, Maverick spend, long tail analysis of suppliers. So out of the box analytics unifying my SAP and non-SAP systems together within Microsoft Fabric with all the business semantics of my SAP system, in this case, currency translation, units of measure, languages, et cetera. Now, how do I get that data into Microsoft Fabric? You see on the left, the first component that we talked about, that zero copy sharing. So if I'm a customer that has BDC, if I'm a RISE customer, and I have that capability with BDC, I can get that data into Microsoft Fabric via the zero copy sharing. Now, Nathan had folks raise their hands. Anybody here still running ECC? Okay, so maybe not all of you yet have all the BDC capabilities. So in that case, another approach that I have to get that data into Microsoft Fabric is by mirroring. So that, unlike zero copy sharing, that's actually going to stage that data and physically load it into 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. So we have mirroring for SAP, first-party offering from Microsoft, and then on top of that, we have third-party providers who have been in the industry for a while that also plug into Fabric mirroring that can be used to integrate that data and pull that data into Fabric as well, because we know a lot of customers have adopted other integration technologies over the years for their SAP environment, and so we partner very closely with some of the leading customer or companies in the SAP ETL space to make that a seamless choice for you to bring that data into Fabric as well. So that's kind of where we start talking about, once again, we think data is critical, a critical ingredient to being successful in AI. So let me turn it over to Nathan a little bit and talk about, hey, once I do that, let's talk about what we want to start thinking about doing with AI.
Have you guys heard of this term called being frontier, or the frontier firm? I think they have it over in the hub on the Microsoft side quite a bit. Judson Althoff, as well as a number of our other leaders, have been spending a lot of time on this AI roadshow. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but I want to give you just a quick sense on how we're looking at this AI journey from a pillar perspective. So pillar one, enrich employee experiences. So this is all about how do I make it better for my employee? How do I use AI to make it better for my employee that's doing something? By the way, I'm going to go pretty quick on these slides. I'm not going to drain the slide. You guys will have access to these. So how do I enrich the employee experience? The second pillar is how do I reinvent my customer engagement using AI? Some of that's just maybe a bot. Some of it is a back-end service to go make things go faster. The point is thinking from a customer perspective, how do I make things go better for my customer engagement? The third pillar that we think about is reshaping business processes. SAP is doing a great job of this, leveraging things like Joule or some of their other embedded AI. We're also looking at this from an overall perspective across that composable architecture that I said before, because we have many of customers like yourselves who are running maybe a Salesforce or a Dynamics as a CRM application with an SAP as a main system that leverages iCertis for contracts, Blue Yonder for supply chain. The point is there's a lot of different applications, so this idea of reshaping or using AI to help reshape these business processes becomes very important. The last piece is around bending the curve. You see a lot of this with like the GitHub development. How do my developers become more powerful in creating things much faster, or even leveraging AI to create it on its own? The point is that we've seen a lot more of the low-code, pro-code type approaches to create these agents. Now, when I say agent, what does that actually mean? Well, what IDC says is there's going to be 1.3 billion AI agents by 2028. It's easy for me to say that number. It's hard for me to comprehend what that actually means. But I think a lot of this is pointing to the fact that we are entering an age where there's going to be a very large ecosystem out there of all these different types of agents that exist. Some pro code, some low code, some whatever code is going to be next. The point is this is getting pretty complicated. This is my favorite slide out of all the AI journey kind of activities, and it's important for us to kind of point out because just to be really clear, we are nowhere near phase 3 on this slide. Okay, so this is like we're in the journey right now. Phase 1 was about how do I leverage AI back to that kind of employee or customer experience where it's, I'm a human, I need an assistant. Help me rewrite this email. Help me do my performance review. Help me gather information about my emails or look up some orders. That stuff we're starting to do pretty well. Copilot has been great at doing this as far as the Microsoft stack goes. This second phase is pretty interesting, which is around a digital colleague. So Robert and I are in a Teams meeting. We pull in an agent. That agent's job is to maybe create a sales order. So I go, agent, go create the sales order inside of SAP. Whose security does it use? Does it use mine? Does it use Robert's? Does it have its own? This is where that Agent 360, which was another announcement that was made this week during the keynote, really has some teeth to it. So this Agent 360, and by the way, SAP is in the next round of developers that we're working with on this topic, but it's around, does that agent have an identity? Does that agent have an email? Does that agent have access to SharePoint? Does it have its own information? On top of that, who's governing it? So when you create this digital colleague, you're literally going to have it to where it's in your team's org chart. So if it's assigned to me, then literally you open up Teams, you look at the org chart, you see the agent that exists in there. That also means it's probably my responsibility to review what the agent does. Now here's one more interesting piece of caveat that goes into the governance conversation. That same agent that Robert and I included, maybe we tell it to go get a whole bunch of salaried information out of SuccessFactors. What if I don't have access or shouldn't have access to that information, but the agent does? Like there's a governance level that requires some layers of security that says if the agent goes and does work and delivers it to somebody, we need to make sure that the person he's delivering it to has the right authorizations as well. I think you can kind of get the point that things are getting a little bit more complicated on how do we govern these things. That's why Agent 365 is becoming very interesting. I'm not going to drain this, what we've done with Joule and Copilot, but this is where Microsoft and SAP, by the way, this conversation started about, a year and a half ago where it was really started with one of those conversations between Satya and Christian Klein. And they said, hey, maybe we should take what you guys are doing with Copilot and what SAP is doing with Joule. Maybe those things should be talking together. This was actually done before the term agentic even existed or before it was cool to try to hook up agents. We've actually been doing this very much at the engineering level to where we can have Copilot talk to Joule, Joule talk to Copilot, okay? And let me get to this demo thing because I'm actually not going to talk to the demo, but you can watch it while I'm using my words. So the idea is this thing running. I was just going to let it go. There we go. Okay. The idea behind Joule and Copilot, this is just running a demo that is just walking through the process to show you how it's communicating back and forth. You guys can watch it if you want to. It'll be available again. But the point behind this is I don't have to have Joule for Copilot to talk to an SAP environment. Joule doesn't have to have Copilot to get information out of the Microsoft graph in M365. But it sure is a heck of a lot easier, and it means I don't have to maintain interfaces. So as an example, if I'm in M365 Copilot and I need information out of SAP, I can hotwire that thing. I can say I want to use the Power Platform adapters, and I can tell it where the SAP system is, what the APIs are that I need to get the information, what security to use. Maybe I'm even setting up MCP servers, which Robert will touch on here in a second. But I can do that. But that's something I have to maintain. I kind of equate it back to a phone a friend. I would rather be in my application and say, hey, Joule, just go and get me this information. And maybe that information needs to come from SuccessFactors, maybe it needs to come from Ariba, maybe it needs to come from an ERP system, maybe it needs to come from all of them. Let Joule go do be responsible for gathering that. But as Robert said, we want to combine structured and unstructured data together. So how do we do that? We get Copilot to get all the information that we need. We have SAP go get the stuff that it's responsible for through Joule, and now we're all happy. That's the idea behind this initiative. The idea of what we are trying to accomplish is let's make things easier, not only for now, but if this thing actually finishes, then I'll move to the next slide, because the next slide has a little bit more teeth too. In fact, I'll just go ahead and go. Now, what this is talking about here is what is the next generation about what's about to happen. So Joule and Copilot, Joule talking to Copilot went live last Sapphire, that you had the ability inside of Teams. We didn't make a ton of noise about it because we were waiting for this second arrow to make it bidirectional. So Joule talking to Copilot, that, watch, it'll be a Christmas gift. This will come out and be announced before, let's look for it in December. But that'll be completing that bidirectional story. And then you'll see us making a lot more noise about it. We're going to do more partner enablement as part of this. We'll do more go-to-market on it, on the fact that this is actually working. But that's quickly leading us into the next conversation. And that next conversation is, let me catch my breath, how do my custom agents, whether I create them in Copilot Studio, maybe I'm creating them in the newer agent framework, which is more of the pro code using semantic kernel with AutoGen, how do I take those customized agents that may land in M365 Copilot? How do I take those custom agents with Microsoft M365 Copilot? How do I take all of that information to talk to Joule agents, to talk to Joule skills, to talk to Joule Studio, their low-code customization, or the agents that are created inside of BTP that are also using all the things that are maybe customized agents that sit in a container on that application. The point is how do these agents all talk together? That's the next round of what we're working on with SAP. So we're accelerating to say, how do these agents all work together in this ecosystem, knowing that we have this whole governance discussion that I was talking about before, on how do we make sure that these things are secure? How do we make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with the maintenance and the monitoring on top of it? So Robert, when we talk about some of these customizations, there's a term that I keep hearing, that I keep saying, what the heck's MCP?
Well, I'll tell you what, before I get into MCP, really quickly, so I hope Nathan kind of, as he steps away, everyone sort of thinks about this from the standpoint of, hey, from an agentic framework, we really want to make Copilot and Joule bring the best of what SAP has to offer with Joule with the best of what Copilot has, or Microsoft has to offer with Copilot, and bring those together. No matter which interface I come from, I bring those components together. Now, quick show of hands, who here is running Joule within their environment today? Okay, so a little bit of Joule out there within the organization. But let's say, hey, Robert, I'm not running Joule today, and I've been told, hey, we've got to have AI for our SAP systems and our SAP applications up and running in the next 2 months. What do I do? Because I don't have Joule. Nathan talked to me about Joule Copilot, but that's not available to me right now, so what can I potentially do? With MCP, MCP offers a structure and an open protocol where I can attach and connect LLMs to back-end hosts and servers. So in this case, let's talk about it in the context of our SAP system. So Robert, I don't have Joule available to me today. I want to start doing LLMs. I want to start bringing agents and AI to my SAP system. How can I get started? Well, from a structure standpoint, what do I need and how do I make this work? So on the right-hand side, you see the SAP system. That could be an SAP system hosted within Azure. That could be an SAP system on-prem. So I've got my SAP system out there. Additionally, that could be an ECC system. That could be an S4 system. Whatever that is, from that standpoint, I've got an SAP system out there. Now, pardon me, with API management, I can connect to that SAP system. And then what I can do is I can expose the APIs from that SAP system utilizing API management, and I can expose them as an MCP server. And once I do that, I can now have Copilot interact with the SAP system. So for example, I could go out there and I could expose the sales order API. Within the sales order API, I think there are about 65 different services within that API on the SAP system. So if I connect that MCP server to that, connect it to Copilot, I can do natural language interaction with that sales order process in the SAP backend. I can do lookups. I can ask all kinds of questions. I can also go out there and update the transactions, create new transactions, or update existing transactions back in the SAP system. Okay? So I can do this today no matter what version of SAP I'm on. Okay? So with that, to help you along that journey, we've actually built out some pre-configured agents to help you get started doing this. Okay? So earlier I talked about with our solution BPS, you can bring all the Fabric data together, or all the SAP and Salesforce and soon Oracle data together into Fabric, and I can interact with that, I can report on that. You saw some of the dashboards. But in addition to that, we are bringing out agents as well. Now, the key thing is those agents can work across the aggregated data from Fabric. So I can ask questions about what are my sales across Europe for this month? How have sales changed in the US this quarter versus last quarter? I can ask those big aggregated questions. It will know to go to Fabric and pull that data together. But in addition to that, I can engage in singular questions about, tell me about my last sales order for this customer. I can do all that together because the agent knows where to go to get the right information. And so with these pre-built BPS agents that are organized by business function, by finance, by sales, by procurement, et cetera, I have singular functions that bring together the aggregated reporting data with the individual transactions back in the transactional system, and I can do a full loop from insight back to taking action in my transactional system. Okay, so what does that look like? How does that work? Give me just a moment for the slide to go. Is it playing?
I think he is.
You don't think it is? Okay, we'll try again.
Where is it?
Oh, it was, and I just skipped off it. All right, hold on. Let me try that again.
There it is.
That play button is very, very small. Okay, so let me show you a little bit of what this looks like in action. So in our agent, you're going to see what we're going to start with is we're going to show you those three components. We have the, in this case, sales reports coming out of Fabric, pre-built dashboards for sales. In addition, I have all my M365 emails and Teams chats back and forth about and with customers. And then I have an SAP backend here where I've got a particular order, and you can see that order, ooh, that was fast, has a billing block against it. Now, in Copilot, I can go out there and I can say, hey, let me call that BPS agent, and I can ask, what are my top 5 customers? Now, that's a big aggregated question. It needs to pull together all my sales orders, so it knows to go and pull that data from Fabric. Now, instead of doing that in Copilot, maybe I'm more comfortable doing that in Teams. So I can ask that same question within Teams, and I get the answer, hey, here are your top 5 customers. Okay, well, tell me about this, this first customer, this Green High Bikes. What are the last 5 orders, or what are the biggest orders that I've gotten from that I've received from that customer? I can ask that information, and now, because I'm asking about individual transaction, it's going directly out against the SAP system, okay? So it's giving me the 5 largest sales orders for that customer, and it's also telling you, hey, by the way, I found an email about one of those orders, which mentioned that the issue that was preventing that order from being shipped has been resolved. And I said, okay, well, it says it's been resolved. Let me go and look at the SAP system. Has it been resolved? Have I taken care of it? No. I can see I still have a delivery block against that sales order in the SAP system. So now the issue has been resolved, but no one's taken action to release that order to make it ship out to the customer. So now I just say, hey, Copilot, can you remove the delivery block on that order for me? Copilot says, sure. Logs back into the SAP system using my authentication and lets you know that it has removed the delivery block from that order. And just to prove that out, we can go back into the SAP system and you can see that delivery block has been removed. So now this is the capability that we're looking to unlock for you to bring together aggregated data so I can get insights across Fabric where I can bring together SAP and non-SAP data to see big picture what's going on with my business process. I can enable my users to do natural language queries. Hey, tell me what's going on, tell me how sales are going in this area, et cetera. But also I can go all the way down to individual transactions. I can connect to the individual source systems and not only pull the detailed up to the second information out of that, but I can actually transact and update and correct directly from Copilot back into those systems to once again have that closed loop from insight to now take action to resolution. Now, BPS, we launched for the analytics piece in public preview back at FabCon EU in September. And now what we are doing is we are launching that next component of the solution, the agents, that bring together the natural language interaction, the consumption of that in Copilot, but also the ability to transact back into your source systems. Once again, pre-built agents organized by business function, organized by business process. Our first two are sales and procurement, and they are entering private preview now. So if you have an interest in exploring those, please sign up there. There's a form that you can fill out to express your interest, and we'll start engaging customers in that deployment. And then once we get through that process, get that feedback, we'll talk about timelines for public preview where you can access it without sign up. So hopefully across, this was a mass run across a variety of topics, but hopefully kind of coming out of this, you understand, number one, how we and SAP think data is a critical component of your transformation journey around enabling your business processes going forward. Microsoft is tightly partnered with SAP on deploying and enabling the data solutions, but also recognizing that in many cases those data solutions extend beyond SAP. And with Fabric and our capabilities, we're engaged in helping you extend beyond that. Additionally, on the agentic side, we are tightly partnered with SAP around their Joule AI interface and connecting that seamlessly with Microsoft, but also understanding that your business processes may extend beyond just the SAP application. So we're giving you the capability to bring those agents to either connect via Joule plus other agents for other applications, or if you don't have access to Joule yet, you can still utilize Copilot against your SAP system and connect it to other sources and other agents as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of how and where you can get started on your AI transformation journey. Questions? I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time. So any questions from the audience on any of those components? Data, AI, all together? Yes? Correct. So the question was, for those who maybe couldn't hear, I asked the question to the agent, and I said, hey, tell me what my top 5 customers are. Well, if I do that, right, I may have to look across thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of sales orders. I mean, some of our customers are doing millions of sales orders a month, right? That's not something that I want to put that query back to my SAP system and say, hey, total up 15 million sales orders on the fly, because that's going to have negative impact on performance of my SAP system. So in that case, when I am asking a question that's going to require going out against a large volume of data, then what happens is the agent knows, hey, that requires a large volume of information. Let me go to the data warehouse, because that's the right place to ask that type of question. So the agent says, okay, you asked an aggregated question, let me go to Fabric to get that detail, or get that information. But on the flip side, when I say, hey, tell me about these 3 sales orders, tell me about the sales orders, the last 5 sales orders for this customer, the agent says, oh, well, that's not an aggregated question. I'm not going to pull a lot of data. That is detailed information. So in that case, I'm smart enough to know to go to the SAP system. So that's part, I say SAP, it could be the Salesforce system, it could be Oracle, what have you. So the agent is smart enough to know, depending on the type of question you ask and the type of information or the volumes of information that you may require to answer that question, it knows where's the right place to go to get that information. Same as a human would, right? If someone asked you that question, you wouldn't try and go and download all the SAP sales orders out of the system and dump those out. That would be a nightmare.
Hey, Robert.
So yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Robert, can we take that question even one layer further?
Sure.
Researcher?
Absolutely. So that's another great question. Unfortunately, we didn't have an opportunity to roll that into the demo as well. But these BPS agents has the ability, I could go out there and ask questions via researcher. I could say, hey, look at the sales for Europe for the last 6 months. Take a look at what's going on. Take a look at this market. Tell me what my opportunities are to optimize for the next 6 months. And researcher can go out there, tell me what's going on in the market. It can do web research, all that sort of thing. But also, it can go to Fabric. It can pull up all the information about my sales to date, put those 2 pieces of information together to provide predictions and recommendations of opportunities to optimize going forward.
And just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, there's 2 first-party Microsoft products that come with M365 Copilot. It's not an extra license, but they're first-party agents. One's called Researcher, one's called Analyst. Think of it as you've got a data scientist or an executive assistant that is smart enough to go and figure out where to find things. Researcher has the ability to call in multiple agents against the M365 stack and reason with it. It's not like a 2-second thing. Like many of these things, you could say, give me a business plan for XYZ on certain criteria you want. It'll go out and run. 5 minutes later, it comes back with a full portfolio of what to do. So the fact that we've got the ability to reason over these data sets is pretty powerful. Deep reasoning, I think, is the term that everybody's going towards now.
Perfect. Thanks, Nathan.
Sorry, hi, thank you, Robert and Nathan. Great presentation. I had a question, probably a simple one, about the BPS pre-built data models that you mentioned. So how do they align with the data products that SAP is putting together? And I'm assuming it's not the same, but there must be some sort of mapping that you do to reconcile them.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to that, and that kind of harkens back to that slide that we saw earlier where we talked about, hey, there are multiple ways and approaches to bring the data in. One of the approaches would be to utilize the delta share out of BDC where those data products would lie. And so therefore, I can have those data products loaded into BDC, and then I can connect to those from Fabric with the zero-copy delta share, and I can use that to support or drive the BPS capabilities. Now, one of the nice things that BPS does, which is kind of it took a little bit of engineering to say the least, is translating SAPEs into something that Power BI can consume is not a trivial task, right? So, for example, SAP uses a lot of ragged hierarchies for finance, for org structure, et cetera. So part of the logic of BPS is bringing those semantics in a way that Power BI can consume and report on. So that's kind of one of the advantages there. So we can utilize those data products from the SAP side. And so part of that mapping, and it's not turned on yet because it's not available, but the intention is once the Delta share comes available in 2026, as we go through and map out, okay, here are the sources if I were to go directly against the SAP system. Here are the data products that I would need to utilize that.
Hi. Thank you for the good partnership. Continue, guys. It's creating a lot of value, what you do. I have 3 questions. For BPS agent, just to confirm, it will work on S/4HANA and ECC independently? It's the same?
Correct. There are a couple of additional configuration steps that you'll have to do on the ECC side around setting up the SAP gateway to have the right API connection coming in. But there's a little extra configuration with ECC, but yes, it will work with either.
The second is if I using memory Fabric and I bring the data of SAP in Fabric, what will the real interest of BPC and Joule if I can use through Fabric because the data are there, Copilot? And the last questions, if I have Joule and Copilot, without bringing all the data to Fabric, so I don't need BPS agent.
So if you have, let me, and I'm gonna not get into the details of licensing because thankfully I'm a product guy and I don't have to worry about those details. I leave that detail to someone else. But the question is, hey, if I have Joule Copilot, do I even need the BPS agent? So I think that's a great question. I think the question becomes, part of the question I would ask is, if SAP makes up the majority or the totality of my landscape, then I don't think you would need that capability. But if I'm in a situation where I need SAP plus Oracle plus Salesforce, and I need an agent that can orchestrate activity across all of those, that might be a place that, even if I have Joule, BPS might orchestrate with Joule, but it might need to orchestrate with other applications as well. And so having that capability to span multiple applications might be helpful and beneficial. And if Microsoft pre-configures those cross-agent interactions, that might be something to take advantage of, even if you utilize Joule and the pre-built content from for the SAP portion of that connectivity.
So sorry, we're actually getting the hook. We're now running out of time. Robert will be outside. You can tackle him and go further. Thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate you spending your afternoon with us, and hopefully we're able to impart some information. Obviously, good luck. Thank you.